What's up, TikTok? So I'll be on the road for a few hours tonight and tomorrow, and so I'm not gonna be able to finish the electroculture videos like I wanted to with the whiteboard, but I already have the PDF almost done. I'll still be sharing that tonight, and I wanted to go over a crash course video as to what's happening and why the copper helps, at least kind of give a high-level view of it with more information in the PDF. So the root cause as to why the plants themselves aren't growing to their full potential in the first place is due to the heavy metal content in the soil. And so, like humans, all the living things need heavy metals, but again, like humans, we have a threshold and when that threshold is passed, they become toxic and poisonous. Same thing with plants. And like humans, when we have a toxin or a poison inside our system, our body reacts by creating mucous membranes, by wasting energy fighting off that toxin and expelling it. And so we're wasting energy surviving and fighting off this external toxin instead of growing, instead of spending that energy elsewhere. Same thing's happening in plants straight off from their seed, and when they start building as a plant, there's too much stress on their growth, or on the entire plant. We as Americans, the industrial machine that America is, creates so much metal in our waste that we already add to, there's excessive levels of metal in soil as is. And then we go and add, like we spray pesticides like zinc oxide, which is again a heavy metal polymer with oxygen. And so the copper itself, when you stick it in the ground, the two energies that kind of play a role here, it's electromagnetic, so the electrical component does some things, and the magnetic field of the copper does other things. The electrical side is when you stick the copper in the soil acts it becomes essentially like a voltaic cell battery, like an earth battery, where the copper cathode and the copper is the cathode, the soil is the electrolyte, and any metals that are in the soil that are less corrosion resistant and have free electrons, valence electrons in their outer shell like zinc does, they become the anode. And so now immediately the copper is already helping regulate the metal content levels in the soil, because it's pulling those electrons away from the zinc, magnesium, whatever else, zinc oxide, and depleting those metals. Eventually we're talking nanoparticles, so it's not instant, but it's pretty quick that they're already helping to regulate the metal content so that the plant doesn't get saturated with those metals, because they clog up the roots. They do all these things inside the plant that the copper gets rid of immediately. During that process of depleting the electrons from the zinc and other metals, it creates that current. So if you have the plant seed next to the copper, when you stick the copper in the ground, if you plant the seed next to it, it's pulling those charged particles through the seed. And a plant cell's membrane has ionic pathways where it takes current, and that's what helps the enzymes make the proteins and like the builder proteins for the DNA that creates the plant. So it's already getting help from the copper current. Those charged particles through the ground is helping the seed itself build the plant. And also the water itself ionizes because of the copper creating this charge, that pulling the salt out of the water creates more pure water for the plant to absorb. So the water it's getting is now cleaner and more pure, so it can use it more efficiently. And for then things like, that's most of what's happening as soon as you stick the copper in the ground. For the polymers like zinc oxide, it has the metal zinc that if you leave out in the air, it oxidizes and corrodes just like zinc does, or just like an iron nail rusts, just like copper eventually rusts out in the air. The oxidizing agent, when you leave zinc oxide, the pesticide, out in the air, eventually the zinc corrodes. And so the zinc corrodes, and the oxidation agent that takes that extra oxygen molecule, now that the zinc from the zinc oxide is depleted, the oxygen molecule that's left binds to the oxygen O2 in the air. What does that create? Ozone, O3. So now that pesticide not only is harmful to the plant when it comes to the metal itself, but if it's out on the plant leaves and sprayed on the crops, eventually the zinc will be corroded, and the only thing left is that single oxygen molecule that becomes ozone. When this oxidation happens electrically, and it's not oxygen creating the corrosion, and it's this current that's pulling the electron away from the zinc, it leaves the single oxygen molecule just like the oxidation does, but the reduction agent is carbon instead of the oxygen. So now the single carbon molecule in the ground binds to that single oxygen molecule and becomes carbon monoxide, which is helpful to the plant. It treats it just the same way as it does carbon dioxide using photosynthesis. It's absorbing carbon monoxide from the ground. So that's two parts. For this pesticide, that is, I'll have another video series about zinc oxide after I've learned how awful it is. But that's what happens in the ground as soon as you stick that copper in the dirt. Copper also has a magnetic field naturally. It has an A field and a B field. And the plant itself, not only does the magnetic field, if it's planted next to the seed and the plant is growing, helps disperse the magnetic, like the metals like iron in the plant itself, and helps with the metabolites that actually, the primary and secondary metabolites that are creating the enzymes to build the plant. The plant knows how to treat magnetic field because one of the two light receptors, the blue light receptor used during photosynthesis, is also able to use electromagnetic energy. That's what the blue light actually is you have the red light, which is the lower, slower light wave. The blue light is the faster and higher frequency light wave. The plant knows how to treat an electromagnetic field and use that to help build in the photosynthesis process. All this information will be, the details will be in the PDF, but during photosynthesis, the electromagnetic field is used to help carry out basically the proteins and everything that are building the plant, again, helping it become bigger and more fruitful and more efficient at growing and producing fruit. And it also helps, the electromagnetic field, when it is absorbed through that receptor, it acts as a plant hormone and makes germination more fertile. So it makes the seeds more fertile. It acts as a plant hormone. Somehow it turns that magnetic field and turns it into basically a plant hormone. And so all of these components help from the get-go make a bigger, more fruitful plant just by sticking the copper in the ground. So all the information will be in a PDF with details and sources, and it'll have a little more detail and drawings, but it absolutely works. There's no reason not to do it, and it's not pseudoscience. Every step of the way is completely backed by science, and the outcome of every single event, things like the oxidation of the zinc oxide, there's all these different components that help the plant itself. The oxidation of the metals inside the plant, when there's too much, the antioxidants can't keep up. The copper itself helps oxidize and pull those metals out of the plant so that the antioxidants can spend time doing their job. So it's like, it's all backed by science and it's all legit. So yeah, hope that helps. Cheers.